The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hello, this is Sara Yusupov. Stop by my show, Let's Talk Careers with Sara, Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, where I will discuss about your dream job, career coaching, answering your questions regarding careers, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite and the Armed Radio Global Networks. Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Careers with Sara. I'm here every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I talk about careers. I talk about anything that can improve your career in life. Today, I have a special guest. Our guest speaker for today's podcast is Schmuel CPA. He is the founder and owner of Schmuel CPA PC, located in New York. Schmuel graduated from Baruch College right here in NYC in 2003 with bachelor's in business administration in accounting. He became CPA in 2013. Prior to starting his own CPA firm, Schmuel worked as a senior manager for several nationally recognized CPA firms, such as BDO, Saveman LLP, RSM, McLadry LLP, and as a manager, he performed audits and tax preparations for companies with close to $1 billion in sales, as well as prepared various individual tax returns for high net worth individuals. He started his practice as a CPA in 2013, and currently, as a sole practitioner, he helps his clients with tax planning as well as advises on wealth management. Schmuel's philosophy has always been to provide service with exceptional professionalism, respected the client's needs, and most of all, to know and understand the client's business, and to care for the business as your own. Schmuel, welcome.
Hi, Sarah. How are you? I'm glad to be on your show.
Thank you. As my listeners, if you are new to my show, prepare a pen and a paper and start taking notes. My show is very productive, so you would like to be ready with a pen and a paper. Schmuel, tell me about yourself. What led you to your career as an accountant?
Well, when I was in college, this is back in 2001, 2001, I was working for a very big diamond wholesaler where I would meet an accountant, a CPA, almost on a monthly basis and have a discussion as to what they were doing and, why are they coming here for monthly updates. And I kind of got interested in it. And I spoke to the CPA on several occasions, and I liked the kind of job that they did. The whole idea of coming in and talking to the client, how they're doing and seeing how their numbers look. And I like the idea of working with people, and I like the idea of helping people. So as I worked and I saw that this is where I'm going to probably go forward in my career, and that's where it led me to become a CPA, and I definitely don't regret it. I like what I do, and I have numerous clients that I help, so that's pretty much my story about how I became an accountant.
That's a very exciting career for you.
Yes, very exciting. I like it. I get to meet people from very different walks of life. You meet so many different people, and that's where I like it the most, because I am a people's person, and I like the fact that all my clients are so different, and I get to learn on how they do their business and what kind of business they have, and all sorts of information that I'm really excited to know for myself as a person.
That's fantastic. Now, I'm sure, when you meet people, you probably network with them. And
yes, networking is a very important part of. I think any business really. It's not really just for people in finance or accounting, because you never know at a meeting or at an event somewhere who you might bump into, who you might meet, and who might be your next big client.
Right.
It's just the world that we live in. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to have contact with. That's going to lead you to to somebody new in your business.
Right.
Even if you're just learning some kind of new information for yourself and educating yourself, I think it's definitely worth networking with others.
Yeah, and with so much regulations and so much laws, how do you stay up to date on the current laws?
Well, as a certified financial CPA, you are required by law to have what's called CPE credits, which means continuing professional education. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, I am required to do it. So the law requires me to stay updated on everything. But on the other hand, I myself am the kind of person where I definitely go and read about my profession, read about the new laws, read about what's going on in the tax world, in the accounting world on a daily basis. Because we live in a world of, constant change. The laws are changing. Our government leaders are changing, where they bring in new ideas and new laws into the tax codes. So I want it or I don't, I must have, stay updated on everything. And that's what makes me, a different, I guess, and a well-educated accountant, because if you're not, you won't be able to help your client.
Right.
You must definitely stay on top of all these laws that are being changed on annual, even sometimes monthly basis.
And what are the top 3 skills that good accountant has or should have?
Well, I think attention to detail, that's a very important part, because as an accountant, when I read financial information, I have to have the skill, the attention to be able to right away catch what I see, whether it's wrong, whether it's questionable, whether it's something to pay attention to. And the second most important part, I think, is the concept of being able to see through the eyes of your client. Putting yourself in the position where you have to look at the way your client sees everything, the way your client understands the world and the way he sees his business. Because a lot of the times it's not going to be what you see; it's what the client sees. So you have to be the kind of person that goes into the the business owner's shoes and that tries to understand where he's coming from. So it's very important for you to become, like I would say, empathetic, not an emotional level, but empathetic as far as the business, and try to see the business the way your client sees it, so that you are, one and the same type of, where you see eye to eye with your client, pretty much.
Right. It's like you yourself. It's like you yourself want that type of service when somebody else on the other side understands you. I agree. Now, lots of people have credit debt. And what methods have you used for estimating bad debt?
I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, lots of people have a credit debt.
Okay.
What methods have you used for estimating bad debt, like giving suggestions for clients if they should move forward with their decision, or they should just wait for another opportunity before investing on something?
Oh, well, you're talking about somebody who has a receivable where I'm trying to understand the question. It's if they invested money in something and they lost it?
Yes. No, they're in debt.
Well, I try to always, advise my clients to make very well-educated decisions about their investments. Don't, never rush into investing money. We live in a country where investing somewhere and spending the money is the easiest part. to make sure that the investment is a smart investment, a well-rounded, educated investment, is where I would say you have to be. And even if you did lose money, at least this time you have more knowledge. You're more smarter. Although I don't suggest that people learn by investing huge amounts of money and losing it and learn their lessons that way. But sometimes it does happen. So, but then again, you have to always do your homework and do your due diligence when you do investment. Try to understand it, try to learn it, and my rule of thumb is if something is too good to be true, it probably is. So you got to be very careful with where and how you spend your money, and as far as how they would write off the bad debt, they could write off the bad debt immediately the year that it happened. If they are 100% sure that this project is a failure and the investment is at this point a lost investment, then we could definitely write it off. I don't want to go into too much detail. There's laws and regulations as to how much you can deduct depending on the amount of the loss, but you can definitely take a loss the year that it happened.
Now, this is just for, let's say, to avoid the bad debts, right? Let's say if someone has $50K a year, $50K in savings account, and how would you develop a strategy to spend or invest that money?
Well, if somebody has $50,000 in savings, depending where they are in their careers, depending on where they stand, I would definitely. A lot of people, and I've seen this in my practice, a lot of people, when they save a little bit of money, they get into buying new houses, new apartments, and invest the money by really creating more liability, because they use that money to put down on something, and then they have to now pay the mortgage on a monthly basis. So when somebody has a set career and everything is going for them, that's a different scenario. But if you're just starting up, my suggestion is always to use that money to create some kind of a business, to invest money in another project where it will actually create a cash flow for you. Not create a cash outflow, but create a cash inflow, which means even if you put $50,000 on a 2%, 1% savings account, you're still getting some kind of return on your money. So my suggestion if somebody has that much money saved up, don't right away hurry up to invest in buying a house or an apartment, especially if you're still young. I would hold off and try to see if I could, do something with that money more smarter to create more cash inflow. Because a lot of people tend to invest money in buying houses, putting money down on a house, and then what ends up happening, they have a major cash outflow, and they pretty much stressed out to get enough money in their bank to pay that mortgage. So
what's
I'm not suggesting that somebody should not buy a house, should not buy an apartment, but I see a lot of youngsters that just starting up their careers, just saved a little bit of money right away, go ahead and buy an apartment or a house, and they don't realize that having a mortgage is a big responsibility.
Right. And then what would you suggest for them? Okay, let's say not to buy a house, but what could they do with the money to double it up?
I don't know about doubling their money, but like I said, I would invest in something that's going to give them some kind of return. Again, it doesn't have to be millions, doubling your money, but if you can invest in a project where you make some kind of return on your money. There's a lot of good, what they call crowdfunding investments. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but there are safe, secure alternatives to investing your money. Again, you might not get extremely high returns, but you're still getting some kind of return on your money. So,
that is kind of like beneficial that you get some return and not staying in debt. That's very good philosophy. Describe a time when you help with taxes, such as saving on taxes, itemized deduction, or saving on cost for starting a business.
Well, a good example would be somebody that comes and says, "Okay, I want to open up my business," and talks about getting an office immediately right away. So that's a big expense in a lot of situations, especially when you're starting up. So my biggest suggestion to somebody who's a startup in any business, if you can start from the basement of your home or somewhere from your home generally, that would be more beneficial and will save you a lot of money. And I know that's how I started my business. I started off from my home where I didn't have to pay rent. So that helped me generate some kind of leads and revenue without having the expense of paying the rent immediately. So that in itself is a big savings for somebody who is a startup. As far as itemized deductions, well, it all depends. It all depends what kind of business that you're in, and it's a big discussion. I mean, there's a lot of deductions that could happen for a business. You're talking about somebody who is a self-employed, I'm assuming.
Yeah, somebody who is trying to transition from career to starting a business. Before making that jump, they need to know what they can itemize in order to save on taxes.
Well, definitely, if you're a self-employed individual, things like your internet costs today, everybody's on the internet. Somebody who's starting up definitely probably has some kind of advertising expense. That would be something that we could deduct. Somebody who's using their cell phone for work could be a deduction. If they're traveling by train to see clients or seek new leads, this is all a deduction. Traveling, out of town by plane or by car, you could deduct the cost of gas, the cost of air, the cost of staying in a hotel. There's a lot of, depending again on what kind of business you're in, the cost of buying a new laptop for your business. There's numerous deductions, meals with your, future clients or meals with your current clients, where you talk some kind of business at the meetings. So some kind of developmental costs that, involve developing your business. So there's a lot of expenses that are out there that you could deduct against your revenues when it comes to having your own business.
That's very nice list that people can actually pay attention to. Listeners, if you are just starting to listen to the show, this will be, after this show, this will be put in a podcast, so you can actually go back and whatever you missed, you can start taking notes and go back again and as many times as you need. Because it's very important information that Schmuel is suggesting here, that I really want you to have the benefits of the show in order for you to enhance yourself and in your career. Schmuel, what are the characteristics of a successful employee in your organization?
Somebody who is responsible, somebody who is a quick starter that could solve problems on their own, somebody who is who comes on time to work. That's a very important part. You have to have somebody who is responsible enough to show up every day and not be, not come late one day and skip work the next day. So somebody who knows that work is important and treat it as, something that's very serious, not just, it's okay if I'll come late a couple of days a week. So somebody who is willing to learn on the job, somebody who does not get offended when you point out some kind of mistake that they made, because we all make mistakes. I made mistakes. The most important part is that you learn from your mistakes and become a smarter, more well-rounded, educated person at work. So when somebody at work gives you some kind of criticism, you shouldn't really take it personally and actually look at it as an opportunity to learn and grow yourself as a professional at work.
I agree. And tell me about a person you admire and why they have made an important impact.
I have a lot of people that I admire in my life, but I would say the closest person to me that I admire the most is my father, who mentored me and made me into the person that I am today, because he himself was always a businessman, and he actually pushed me into becoming a CPA, and it's thanks to him today that I am the kind of person that I am. But he was the one who always gave me that boost and push to becoming and giving me the advice that I needed to becoming the person that I am today. And I really appreciate that about my father.
That's nice. And your father is actually like coach for you, motivating
you. Yeah, exactly. He's my coach. He's the person that once told me, he said, even if you have the smallest business that does not bring you lots of revenue, the satisfaction you get from it is more important than the money you make from it. And he said, eventually you will still get there. If you love what you do enough. But having a business that's very little, you don't have much clients, is better than having a 9-to-5 job.
Right.
That's what his motto was for life. So that kind of stayed with me until today.
That's a very nice thought, saying like it's better than 9-to-5 job if you have even less clients.
Yeah, if you have the smallest business, it's better having close to nothing in your business than having a 9-to-5 job, because that close to nothing can eventually grow into something really big.
Tell me when you were the most and the least satisfied in your career.
The least satisfying in my career would be when I was, working in these huge corporations as an associate. Because I'm not saying I'm complaining about the corporate world, but it's not an easy place to work at. There's a lot of politics involved, so that kind of made me not so happy at work at certain jobs that I had. But as I grew and as I worked more and grew up the ladder at the corporate level, I learned that, yes, when you are an associate, you're treated differently, so you feel that the job is boring. But as you grow, you learn that, really it's not as boring as you thought. So, yes, I would say the least satisfaction was when I was an associate, versus right now I'm very satisfied because I work, like I said before, I work with clients, and the biggest satisfaction is when I planned out in advance something for the client as far as the tax planning, and then it works out, and you see the result, the positive result, and the client is happy, and you're happy, and that's very satisfying to me. That's very rewarding at the end of the day.
And what do you do when you have tight deadlines and multiple tax returns to finish?
Well, I work hard. I do a lot of hours when I have to. I'm not going to say it's always, but when it comes tax season, I definitely work longer days, and I don't work Saturdays, but I do work on Sundays. So I put in as much hours as I need to get what it has to be done at the end of the day. And I'm used to this, to this idea that, when the tax season comes, I work close to 12-hour shifts, and it doesn't bother me, because when you're busy doing work, the time flies so fast that your day kind of goes by. You get in at 8 a.m. By the time you look at the clock, it feels like 15 minutes passed, but it's already 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So when you're busy working and you're satisfied with your job, and you're happy at your job, and you're happy as to what you're doing, you don't feel the dread that some people actually feel at work, because they're counting every second at work. With me, the time flies, because I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and and I'm just working through the day, and it's like a breeze for me. I don't feel that pressure of work, even when I'm working late hours.
It's great that to have an accountant that actually not there for the money, but actually there to help the client to succeed. So I'm really happy that you said that you actually love your work, and even though it takes you 12 hours to deal with income taxes, to deal with whatever work that needs to be done, just to have this client satisfied and be on time with any deadlines that that person has. Schmuel,
For sure.
Schmuel, if anybody wants to contact you regarding their tax return questions or booking an appointment with you, how they can reach out to you?
Well, I have a cell phone, which is the best way to reach me. My number is 917-863-3157. I also have a fax, if that's something that they need to fax me. My fax is 718-799-1102, and my email, which is mostly used by me, is info@paltielcpa.nyc. Again, that's info, info@paltielcpa.nyc. So I'll be more than happy to take any questions from anybody that has any kind of tax issues or questions.
So, as you heard, Schmuel can be reached out on his cell phone, 917-863-3157. I believe you also receive text messages if anybody needs to just to text you something. Now, for the most part, how have you helped clients save money or better use their available financial resources?
Well, there's a lot of different clientele I have that I save money for. I'll give you a simple example. I had and I still have that client. He's an Amazon seller. He's very successful. And at one point, he had his warehouse he used in the city of New York. And in the tax code, if you are in the city of New York as a corporation, which is what he is, and to be specific, he's an S corp, you are responsible 8.85% of New York City tax just because you're in the city of New York doing business. And he's in the kind of business, he doesn't really have to have a warehouse in the city of New York. Yes, it made it convenient for him because it was close to his home. But as I reviewed his previous returns, I saw that he paid a hefty amount to the city of New York by being in the city. And when I had a discussion with him, I said, if you can move your operation somewhere on Long Island, upstate, which is out of the 5 boroughs, you will save 8.85% in tax you're paying right now to the city of New York. So he took my advice. He got a smaller warehouse out on Long Island. And right now he's been in business. After that, he's still in business for the past 3 years. He's been my client. And he's just every year that he's making money and he's very successful. As I said, he's saving 8.85% tax that he used to pay before he got me as the accountant. So right now he's saving that money, and that's extra money for him to spend on advertising, extra money spent on developing a better website for himself. So that in itself alone is a huge help for the business, because let's say he made $100,000, 8% of that would be $8,000 that he could have used to boost up his advertising, on Amazon. So he's very excited.
In Long Island, what is the tax bracket there?
Well, if you're a corporation, you don't really pay much. Again, if you're an S corp, you don't really pay much as tax. It all goes by the gross receipts. So there is no stated rate for a corporation. It goes by gross receipts. So an example would be if somebody grosses in $100,000, they're paying $50. If they're grossing between $100 to $500, they're paying $100. If they're $1 million gross company, they're paying $1,000. So that's how the state tax works when you're an S corporation in the state of New York. So that's the tax pretty much. If you're a partnership, it's a similar setup. If you're an LLC, it's also a similar setup. But overall, if you're a corporation, that's why sometimes it is beneficial to become a corporation. And then the income from the corporation on an S corp goes on a K1, and that K1 gets included onto the individual person's tax return, and that's where they have to pay the tax. So there is no such thing as, if I live on Long Island, my rate is different. Yes, it is. You are saving because you're not in the city of New York. But the way you get taxed is where you actually work, not where you. I'm sorry, the other way. It's where you live, not where you work. So if you live on Long Island, yes, you are going to pay less tax because you're not in the city of New York.
So we'll discuss more about entities and type of corporations. Listeners, if you're still listening, towards the end, we'll go over how you can open up your own business, even in your current financial situation. For the income statement, Schmuel, what penalties can the candidate face?
Okay, so the most penalty that I've seen and actually learned about is understating your income. When I say understating, they're talking about your gross receipts. So if somebody earned, $150,000 in gross receipts from fees or whatever type of business that they're in, from sales, if they're understating that amount by more than 10%, that's a big. They charge really big penalty at the IRS for that. There's the second. After that would be overstating your expenses. So if you saying that you had $10,000 in auto expense, in reality you had $5,000. That's not a good thing. I mean, I haven't seen anybody put to jail for that, but I did see situations where the expense was disallowed because the client was unable to provide support for the additional expenses. And also, the IRS wants to see that it's reasonable in nature and that it's necessary for the business to incur such expenses. So, a lot of people have a misconception that they could write off their house rent and they can write off, having their kids go through kindergarten or a daycare. And yes, they do get some kind of credit for that on their personal return, but it's definitely not a business expense. So, there's the very big line that separates the business expenses from non-business expenses or personal expenses. A lot of the times I allow the clients and it's allowed by law to expense the home office use. So if they're paying rent or they have a mortgage on the house and they're using certain square footage of the home for work, they are allowed by law to deduct that part on their tax returns. So, but it's very restrictive, and you must have a dedicated space where you don't live, you don't sleep, you don't eat in that space. You just, do business. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, then you are allowed to partially deduct the expense of having that place, which means you can deduct partially the utilities used in that place, partially deduct the phone expense if you use the phone, partially deduct the rent or the mortgage interest, and the property taxes paid for the entire property. But again, you're taking a portion of that entire balance. But you definitely not a good idea to understate your income or to overstate your expenses when in fact you don't have the support to support the expense and to prove to the government that this is a necessary business expense for your business.
Mm-hmm. And will they get audited? For example, coming to their homes to check if it is...
I have not seen that. I mean, I'm sure there are cases where if the government really wants to, and this is when I read case studies, and I read a lot of different case studies, when they discover fraud, that's when the government usually comes in and starts to become more aggressive. But if it's just an overstatement and it's an oversight, they don't really like. And plus, it's a numbers game. The more bigger the numbers, the more the government wants to go after the individual. So if somebody who's making 100,000 versus somebody who's making $1 million, the government prefers the bigger fish because they can probably get more, money from that person, more tax dollars that they did not get paid when they were initially filing the return. Possibly, again, they would need to go and review and audit everything to actually come up with any kind of overstated or understated income.
That's like makes me think, do like rich people get audited? Are they like on the radar?
For sure. I mean, I've seen smaller clients get audited. I've seen bigger clients get audited. So everybody has a chance of being audited. So that's why it's always a good idea to have somebody who knows their stuff when it comes to tax law, and somebody who is going to guide you as to what you can and cannot deduct. This way, it's, I hate to say it, but I've seen accountants that they do what the client wants and not what the law allows. So you have to be very careful because, just because you have a great refund this year or you paid very little in tax does not make it right, does not make it correct. And then when you in fact get audited, these individuals will hide and say, "Oh, I didn't do it. It's your fault," or whatever. Again, I hope we don't have these kind of individuals out there, but it does happen from time to time, and I've seen it done. So you have to be very careful and not to think, "Oh, but this accountant saved me a lot of money." It does not mean he did a correct and legally allowed type of tax return. You have to make sure that the numbers make sense and you have proof, because you never know if you get audited. I don't know why, but I hear a lot of the times that certain accountants give some kind of guarantee that they're not going to get audited. I don't know to this day how the IRS picks somebody for an audit, or how the IRS looks at somebody who is a corporation for an audit. And so we all have an equal chance of being audited. So to me as a professional, when I prepare a return, I'd like to make sure that I have all the backup, all the information at hand, and I always prepare the return with the notion that if I get audited or the client gets audited, we always have all the proper, deductions, and we have all the proper backup for all the deductions. This way, when the audit actually happens, it's going to be a breeze. We just send in the information, the auditor reviews it, and comes back with no change. And so that's how I try to do my job, so that I don't create more problems to the client than they already have with their business or with their work.
Right. Now, I'm sure you probably have difficult customers. Give me an example of how you successfully dealt with someone who was difficult.
Well, yeah, I do have clients like that, and you're always going to have that when you're your own business owner. Somebody once told me, when you're employed by somebody, you have one boss, but when you're working for yourself, all your clients are your bosses.
Right.
So in a way, you're responsible for everything. But when I have a difficult client, I never raise my voice. I usually try to explain as much as I can. I try to explain in such simple terms to the client something, because you have to understand that the fact that the client is not you, and he doesn't know the tax law, the information that you know. So in order for him to understand it, the frustration that he's having is because he's not understanding it. So a lot of times I try my best to just sit the client down, calmly explain everything, and a lot of the times when you do sit down and actually spend the time with the client, they tend to understand it better and they tend to get it better. You just have to give them more simplified examples of what you're trying to explain to them. So,
did it ever happen to you that the client was so difficult that you ended up just, I would say in quotes, firing him?
I mean, I did have somebody who was, yes, he was very difficult. He was a client that refused to pay the sales tax, and at this point, I just kind of, didn't want to argue too much and fight too much. I explained to him as best as I could that he was responsible, and I just didn't want to take the responsibility of dealing with somebody who can cause me problems. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm signing off on something that's not correct, that's like saying you're signing up for a fraudulent return at the end of the day. So if you as the accountant help the individual file such return, then you also a responsible person. So, I mean, as much as I could have explained, I explained, and then the client decided that he's going to go to another accountant, which I was fine with because I just did not want to deal with somebody who's going to cause me more problems going down the road. And I explained them the law. I printed out materials that explains to them that they're responsible for the sales tax. They refused to understand it. And I said, I'm really sorry if you're trying to do something illegal. I'm not going to stand by you and condone such a thing because I don't want to get myself in trouble in this kind of situation. So, yes, there are going to be cases like this, and that have happened. But again, it's part of the business. You can't have it all, as they say. So sometimes you are going to have dissatisfied clients for whatever reason, and sometimes you just have to let it go if that's where it brings you.
Right. It's not even worth.
It's just not worth
it affects your health, it affects your business, it affects
exactly.
Sleeping nights, but wondering what happens if it's true. Yes. It's better to let go. And did anything about this career surprise you?
Yes, I mean, I was always under the notion that this profession is very boring, but I'm not finding it to be boring at this point in my life. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting to me, because of the ever-changing laws and regulation. I think it makes my job more interesting. I like to have a challenge every now and then, and this job provides me with that kind of challenge. So makes me want to learn, makes me want to stay on top of all the regulations that are going on, and the fact that I'm meeting all these different people actually makes it more interesting and exciting rather than boring. So a lot of people before I went to become an accountant told me, "Oh, it's boring. You're not going to like it. It's very repetitive." Yes, it could get that way, and it does sometimes, but again, that's just a very small part of the job. It's not just, the repetitive work. You have much more interesting things at work.
Yeah, I feel like when you work for somebody, it can be repetitive. But when you work for yourself, you can challenge yourself. You can find ways to challenge yourself.
Exactly, yep.
And what advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't procrastinate. I took my CPA exam quite late in my career because I kept on putting it off. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say I'm 100% a procrastinator, but also you have situations in life where they force you not to sit for the exam. And my situation was I was working. I was very busy at work, and even though I told myself I'm going to take it, it didn't happen until I actually quit my job and just took the exam full-time studying for the exam. But again, I think the important part is when you graduate, school, and if this is your goal to become a CPA, don't procrastinate. Don't think to yourself, I'll have another year, let me take a break. I think while you're young, your brain is where it's at its peak as far as absorbing information, understanding, and you can remember better, and all of these things, they play a very huge difference. And plus, while you're still on the roll of taking exams and you're already used to the idea, it's always better to just not stop that. Don't take a break and say, I'm too tired now, let me take a break for a year. So my most advice to anybody out there that's in school and trying to become to become a master's in something or get an MBA or get a CPA and they've just finished their bachelor's, I would not procrastinate going forward right away immediately because, again, you are at the momentum where you're used to the idea of studying, you're taking exam regularly, so that in itself is a big, huge help. And I've seen this a lot of times where people take 2-3 years off and then go back to school. It becomes much more harder for them.
Right. I was about to say, like, I'm guilty myself of being procrastinating. I mean, you have so much to do in your life and you just feel like whatever you want to do, it's not a priority. But I do believe that procrastination is something that really kills you. You really don't want to waste time, like 2 or 3 years. If you need to go back to school right away, because like you said, it is going to be harder because,
for sure,
because of whatever reason, it is going to be harder.
For sure.
Now, let me ask you this. If you weren't an accountant, what would you do instead?
I actually ask myself that question sometimes. I mean, I've always loved music. I did at one point play in a few instruments, and I did go to school where, you know, I came from the former Soviet Union, and in 1992, a lot of the people left, former Soviet Union to go to various countries, including U.S. like us, and I stopped my studies, and I was really good in music, so I thought about it, and I think music would have been one of my second choices as a career, because I to this day I still enjoy playing, and I do have, musical instruments at home where it's kind of my hobby at this point. I'm not gonna make a career out of it, but I do enjoy music as much as I enjoy my work, and so yes, I think maybe I would have become some kind of a performer, musician, if accounting didn't work out for me.
Now, let's say, can the listeners right now transition to self-employment with their professional background, without going to college, without going to any training, but with whatever skills they have, can they transition to self-employment?
I think for sure, very possible, and I've seen it happen. And it depends again what kind of job they have. The beautiful part of the country that we live in, you don't really have anything, done as far as if you want to go into business. You don't need a license. You don't need to incorporate. You can just work under your own name as a self-employed, sole proprietor type of individual. Yeah, there's questions asked after, you've been doing it for a while. There might become some kind of legal liability if you don't incorporate or don't. But I would say the smart thing to do if you are going into any business, transitioning from your current job to becoming your own owner, you don't really need to incorporate. You don't really need to get an LLC immediately, right away. If you do go into business, you could just work under your own name. But you do have to keep in mind that if, it starts to grow into something that you did not expect so fast, you do have to think about, incorporating, because there are, liabilities that could arise out of your job where you must be protected. You must have some kind of a protection for yourself against your personal assets in case you're being sued, in case something happens. And, it's bound to, something always does happen at work, at a job. So you do have to have some kind of protection. So, and again, you don't have to get it right away, but eventually you do have to get some kind of incorporation and incorporate your business. This way, you do have this kind of barrier between you and the corporation, where if somebody's suing the corporation, they're not going to be able to sue you and have you hold you responsible for it. So it's a good idea to start that way without getting anything right away to save money. But if you see that the business is growing and everything is going as planned, you should definitely think about, incorporating and getting a corporation.
Schmuel is very knowledgeable about taxes and about accounting. So if you want to reach out to him, it's 917-863-3157. 917-863-3157. He's located in Queens, New York. Now, as I know, like you explained right now about different types of entity and their benefits. Majority of the time, what do clients choose to open as?
Well, it all depends, but in my situation, I think majority of my clients are S corps, which is an S corporation. It's a corporation that's pretty much treated like a partnership in a way, where there is no federal income tax on such entities, which means whatever income the person earns from the business, it comes in on a K-1 or on a W-2 if the person gave himself a salary from their own business. So, but the corporation itself, unless it's filed late, there is no fee or tax of any kind that the corporation pays. So that is a big tax savings. So a lot of people choose to become an S corp or an LLC, which is the other alternative. Again, the same thing. The LLC itself pays a minimal, it's like $25 per person per year in like a fee that the New York State, if it's a New York State LLC. Some other states don't even have that. Most of the time, LLC is just a flow-through entity, it's called. So any income that the LLC makes flows through the individual. There is no federal tax on the LLC level. It's always on the individual. So between the two entities, I would say S corps and LLCs are the most popular ones. That's where most professionals that are sole proprietors, sole practitioners, be it an attorney or a dentist or a doctor, they choose to be an PLLC, a professional limited liability company, or a PC, a professional corporation. And again, when they're a corporation, then we have what's called an S election that we have to do in order for them to be treated like a small business corporation, kind of like a partnership. So those are the two most popular. I don't want to go into too much detail as which one is better over the other, because it's very subjective to the specific situation the client has. Some people that live on Long Island would probably benefit from having an S corp because they don't have New York City tax. Some people that they like the idea of not having to file a separate tax return. They're single members. Then LLC would be a better choice, because a single member LLC is filed on the individual's return under Schedule C, so they don't have to do a separate return from their own. So that makes things much more simpler. But then there's issues with Schedule C, which tends to get audited more often than other parts of the return. So weighing all these things, I usually come up with the best choice for the client, depending, again, what kind of situation the client is in.
Right. It's very confusing. So you should definitely go to Schmuel, and he will explain to you based on your ideal job or a side hustle, whatever that is that you want to do. You can reach out to Schmuel, 917-863-3157, and he's going to suggest you what entity you should be opening up with. It's very important to be legal and ethical about this, because you might think you're saving money, but at the end it's going to bite you. So go to Schmuel. He's going to help you with whatever accounting needs that you have. Now, before we finish up, Schmuel, I have a few questions left. How do you define success?
I think, put in simpler terms, is when when you work and you enjoy your job and you also get compensated for it, and that's very very satisfying feeling because you're enjoying what you do, and at the end of the day, you're also being rewarded by being compensated for it. So the combination of the two makes this a very successful job for me. So I that's where I think success as far as your career me personally, that's where I always wanted to be, and that's where I am right now.
Right, you just follow your passion. That's,
exactly.
It's not just the money, it's just where you're happy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Schmuel, for being with me tonight. I am very happy that you shared so much valuable information, and I'm sure listeners are there listening and are having some questions to ask, and we probably didn't cover it here. You can reach out to Schmuel 917-863-3157. 917-863-3157. Thank you, Schmuel, so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me, Sarah, and good luck to all the people out there that are trying to be successful and make it. And I'm always happy to help whoever needs any kind of tax questions to be answered.
Thank you, listeners, for being with me tonight. We'll see you next Wednesday. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Facebook. Let's Talk Careers with Sara. And let me know what other experts you would like to hear on the show, and we'll make it happen.
Tune in to Let's Talk Careers with Sara here on Armed Radio Global every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Stuck on your careers? Hate your boss but don't know how to move on? Don't know how to ask for a salary raise? Then you need to listen to my show, Let's Talk Careers with Sara, every Wednesday night here on Armed Radio Global. If you like this episode, please follow and share with others. Join my group on Facebook called Let's Talk Careers Inner Circle. If you would like to be featured on my show, let me know in the group. And I have an event coming up, Career Readiness Workshop. It's on August 20 at 7:30 p.m. You will learn about job strategies, interview skills, and this will be your opportunity to network with others. More details on bit.ly/career readiness workshop. You are tuning in to Let's Talk Careers with Sara. I'm aired every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. In this show, I talk about career advancement, resume revamps, interview expectations, how to stand out from the crowd, how to brand yourself, and skills you need to become a CEO. All of this is on Armed Radio on my show, Let's Talk Careers with Sara, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite and the Armed Radio Network.